Thank you. So, do we have any calls or email Darshan questions?
The phone line's open. If anybody is on would like to speak, like to ask. Okay, it sounds like there's not anybody on the phone yet, but I have some through email.
Okay.
Okay. This is from Constance Welsel. She says, "Beloved Holy Master, what is the underlying reason to Achila when abundance does not come in spite of obedience to directions?" Thank you, Constance.
The answer from the Master is that abundance can come in many ways. And we have to have patience in order to understand how God is answering our requests. There is always an answer, and sometimes we don't always see it with our physical eyes or cognize it with our minds. Obedience is one aspect of what is required for precipitation, and yet love and insight, inner sight, is also a key, a major key for us all. So, perfunctory obedience to the letter of the law does not conjure up within the heaven world all of the essences that are required for heaven to answer with the grace that comes because our hearts are engaged fully with a tremendous buoyancy of joy and an acceptance of God's virtues. At times, if we were to receive exactly what we may be humanly desiring, it may not be to our ultimate spiritual benefit to receive those things. And so God may answer in other ways. The angels may come in other guises, through other means, to provide for us what is essential for our soul and for our spiritual evolution. When we create a treasure map, or when we write down our goals and those things that we desire to precipitate, we must consecrate them to the highest purpose of heaven for the glory of God. And if there is any ounce or shred of human attachment, human desire for things or for situations to occur or manifest that are not fully surrendered to God from within our hearts for the most noble realization of the kingdom of God upon earth, then heaven may not be as specific as we would like heaven to be in precipitating that which we have envisioned or desired. A wise teacher has said, "This or something greater, O Lord." And when we can use those words in our alchemies, the greater becomes that which God illumines and highlights, that then brings us wisdom so that we may manifest our self-realization and grow into that enlightened state of our own Buddhic beingness. Now, when people are requesting things of heaven, remember that those things, as something tangible in the world of form, can still be a weight upon us or a limitation. And the wise ones always request virtues, as the Master Omram has shared and other masters have shared, virtues of the Spirit, so that we can bless life. So first and foremost, when we ask of heaven for graces, for things, let those things be divine things. Let them be qualities, God virtues, quintessences that allow us to fulfill our divine destiny with our spiritual brothers and sisters upon earth, that bring the fruits of heaven, the cornucopia of light, and the holy graces of the angels and celestial beings into play in our world to suffuse that light energy into our world for the greater glory of God. Now, when we require certain things, a home, a car, abundance, etc., to fulfill our divine plan, then it is the joy of God and the angels to deliver it in miraculous ways that go beyond our human comprehension and that use the instruments of heaven through the world of form as karma and dharma allow it to come forth. So when we say this or something better, the something better may come in a way that we may not always realize that it is coming, through the heart of another person, through even a heart stream of a master that brings us a key for our life stream that will help us to soar, to go deeper within, to resolve all of our psychological issues, etc. And so when we ask for these graces and the beloved essences of our Godhood to be anchored within our being and world, this to me is the highest desire and request of heaven and of God. And I can assure you that heaven will deliver those requests first, rather than the things that we may think we need or require, which we may not always require. One thing that I noted in Ghana was how little people had and yet how happy they were. And we saw this time and time again. They, of course, would like some things to make their lives easier, but ultimately it is joy, it is love, it is family harmony, it is the spirit of life itself that gives us the greatest happiness and eternal joy. And so when we ask for these things on behalf of ourselves and others, the angels smile and they do everything that is divinely possible for them in the realms of all of the God possibilities that exist to bless us with those radiances and with those divine joys. So I think that when we heart mindfully meditate before we begin any alchemy or write or pen a request of God or the karmic board, and we really go deeper into our soul through great thought and contemplation, we will understand what is essential for us. I'm seeing that many of the saints of the past requested the grace of God, the love of Jesus or Mary or Joseph or many of the saints to permeate their being. And this is why they were saints. They didn't rely on so many of the physical or human resources to sustain them. They relied on the light of God, the love of God, the virtues of heaven to sustain them. So, yes, as alchemists, any of us can put our energy into kind of a demand of heaven for things that we think we require. Yet ultimately we can't take these things with us. And the more things we have when we make our transition, sometimes the greater burden it is upon our children and our grandchildren to deal with those things, to dispose of those things, to sell or get rid of those things. And so when we are in our final years of our lives, it is meet for us to prepare for our transition and ascent, mindfully leaving our legacy and yet not encumbering or burdening those who are our children with many things which may not serve them for their highest purpose. So, this is a very good question because all of us at times have seemed stultified in precipitating exactly what we may have put on paper. And we have to go back to the laws of alchemy that Saint Germain has given us. And first and foremost, as I recall, very often what the Master says is we have to look at our motive. Why are we asking for what we're asking? What is our true inner motive? And when our motive is pure, when our hearts are free to be who we are, we ask less of God and we simply accept often what is and the blessings that come day by day through our lives, through our breath, through the sunrise, through the simple and little things in life that can bring great joy, balance, and harmony to our lives. So thank you, Constance, for this very important question.
Is there anyone on the line who'd like to speak? I hear something. Okay. This one's through email. It's from Donald Galvin. He says, "Beloved Master, can you tell us to what extent the people of Earth are meshing with the shift that is occurring and will be occurring through 2012 and beyond? And are the Masters pleased with the progress of people's awakening to higher principles? And as we personally come up higher, how great an impact is this on people everywhere? Thank you for your insights that will help us all."
Well, the answer is I am the one. And we will learn in our next Meru University course in 1201 in January 2012 that we individually are accountable for everything. So when we ask, well, how are the people of the world doing in accommodating these higher principles, the light essences of heaven, the shift, the question comes back to us, how are we doing? And if we are the one with El Moria, we constantly look within and see what within us yet remains to be shifted to accommodate the fullness of God, the greatness of God's light and glories within our soul, within our hearts, within our being. If there's anything in us that limits us from fulfilling our highest calling, our truest nature, then we need look no further than ourselves to the outside world, to others, to ascertain how the world is doing or how others are doing. I believe that when we accept this level of responsibility for all that is manifesting in our world, there's a continuous shifting. It's not just one shift. It is a continuous process. It is life itself that allows the strains of heaven in the alchemies that exist in each moment, in each eternal now moment, to afford us the possibility for our pure beingness to glow, for our light to shine. And therefore, when we root out all sense of limitation, any vestige of a vice or a nonsensical habit or reliance on sugar or an overindulgence in anything, then we make the shift internally continuously. We are constantly self-assessing with God's grace before us and around us. Our higher mentors are training us, tutoring us, and educating us in a lifelong process that is beautiful. And we don't look to outer events, to political situations, to the frustrations of what's going on as expressed through the media, to gain an understanding of what is essential for the planet and for ourselves to master. The shift is occurring, and it's a continuous shifting process. And it will go on for quite some time. Our goal is the enlightenment and the freedom of every sentient being. So, if and when every sentient cell within our being is free, fully free in the light, pure, unadulterated, whole, and holy, then I believe at that point the greatest shift occurs. We ascend and we raise all life in the process. And when it is God's timetable for others to come into the same level of wholeness and purity and beingness, it will happen. So I'm learning more and more that I simply have to look within and see what yet remains to be resolved, appreciated, blessed, and graced by the Spirit within me, so that I can be of greater service to humanity. I can be a light beacon of hope, guidance, and joy to all with whom I interact. I simply desire to be all light so that anyone, everyone can be blessed by my presence wherever I am. And if people don't understand my path outwardly, if they still feel the light or see the light, then maybe they will be magnetized to the message that comes through and my example of a pure life. And this, my example, is the highest offering that I can truly give. If I am living in my solar presence and I'm radiating light, 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 and solar joy, some people, the sensitive, will pick up on that, and they will desire to know what I'm doing to allow this to manifest in my world. This really is the greatest outreach or heart sharing that we can do, to be that light. So, again, as I see it, Donald, and all of us, every cell, every solar cell within our beings can manifest even greater radiance by our internalization of God's beauty, of God's qualities and virtues. And when we do this, then we don't worry about what's happening out there. We are that light. We are the one. We are living fully in our integrity. And all comes into harmony, all comes into a divine level of perfection and joy. And our inner sight expands. Our insight expands. And then what we see out there, we first know within. And our seeing becomes so crystal clear with the silent watchers that what we see is perfection. And therefore, because what we see is perfection, we are living and being in that perfection. Thank you.
This is from Lisa Delaney. She says, in recent meditations, I have experienced my solar awareness as a lens of my consciousness, as Master Omram teaches. I also have felt that my soul is actually a part of my higher self. Sometimes I visualize my soul enfolded in the heart of my presence. Where is our soul connected to our presence? Is it a portion of our higher self's heart? Do our chakras connect to higher chakras in our presence similarly? Can you please give us a clearer understanding of how our solar consciousness is connected to our higher self? Thank you so much. With love, Lisa.
Well, you look at nature to discern the answer to this, because everything that exists within us, both in our lower and our higher natures, exists within nature, because God created nature first. I see the umbilical cord of the child tied to the mother within the womb as that sacred tie that binds and that affords that child life. And our soul is connected to our oversoul, our great solar presence, through the crystal cord. We know that while living as an individual monad or soul upon earth in 3D, that we require that crystal cord connection to maintain life as we know it in this realm. And when that cord is severed, then we lose our physical life, and our spirit, our soul, returns to another world, the inner world, the etheric plane. So the constant connection is there until the soul is completely wed to spirit and merges into the oversoul. And yes, there is an alignment of chakras as we fix our attention upon our presence. The greater the level of the gentle intensity of our devotion, our praise, and our focus upon God and light, the greater the resonance of our chakras, our hearts, our beings with the divine chakras and beings of our highest selfhood. So it's not an intensity born of strain and stress and human trying. It's an intensity born of pure love, of letting go, of complete surrender, and of acceptance. And the greater that we know ourselves, the more we know ourselves, the greater this connection becomes, and we are uplifted and are subsumed into that light and that energy of our presence. So it's great that you're actually feeling that your soul is ascending and is a part of your solar reality, because that is an indication that you are making progress and that you are feeling deep within your being this constant state of connection and of maintenance of that beautiful state of presence. The more and more we feel God's love within our heart and being as a constancy throughout our day, the more we have and maintain that connection. So from my experience, the feeling of love of God, love of the universe, love of all life is imperative in the maintaining of the state of presence. And it's not a mental construct. It's not something we can force by mental acuity or prowess or even by human intelligence. It is a state of grace that allows the light of God through love deep within our hearts to naturally allow the soul to rise to its perfect divine estate of being in complete harmony with the Oversoul, the presence of God. This is a process, and I've stated many times that my path has been one of devotion, and I feel that one of the safest means of attaining this state of grace is through complete devotion and love of God, and attention upon God, focused through love, through the heart. The heart is the center chakra of our beings, and when we are centered there, when we are heart-centered, then naturally the soul ascends and becomes one with her mate, the Oversoul. This union is something that we have longed for within our souls for eons of time, this state of oneness with the great beloved, I am. And those of you who are feeling the indwelling presence and the infilling light by the power of the Holy Spirit of your great God Self on a daily basis through your love shared in all manner of creative ways, are beginning to sense the state of holiness that will be yours forevermore in this level of perfection that comes because we give ourselves fully to God. We then are God. God becomes us, and we are one. Creativity is essential in this, because when we have creative outlets that allows the Spirit to use us to heart-mindfully express the divine light and to glorify God through our heart, head, and hand, through our talents and gifts. This is the means whereby we prove that we are in that state of elevated awareness and consciousness. And I believe that God, as the great creator, has invested himself, herself within us to also be co-creators. And as a co-creator, when we are in that creative spirit and using the resources vouchsafed to us to be expressive of universal light, then the integration becomes complete. And we are the co-creator. We know what that means. It's not just words. It's more than even a feeling. It is beingness. And when we get this, when we live in that, it's amazing, it's powerful, it's dynamic, and we are in our true joy of that oneness. Thank you. I think we have time for one more, and then I'd like to do violet fire prayers.
This is from Britt Marie Pearson in Sweden. Beloved Almoria, what can we do to make people understand that the Ascended Masters and the angels are real and that we can walk and talk with you daily, since we in Protestant countries are not used to praying daily and think that there is another reality than that which we can see with our eyes? Thank you.
Well, the answer is that you become the master, and you are expressive of Ascended Master joy, principles, teachings within your life, within the example that you leave and that you shine forth. They will only believe something when it's shared with humility and integrity through your example. The more you master yourself, the more people will flock to you to hear what you have to share, because they know and they feel the wisdom, the power, and the love that's burning within your heart, because you have proven the axioms and the hypotheses of life by your example. We can never convince anyone of anything by force of will. We can't really shake them awake unless they're willing to be moved. The highest means of teaching is example. And therefore, the more that heart friends within our movement master themselves, the faster we will grow, the more harmony will exist within our lives, in our communities, the greater love will be shared at all levels, and this will naturally magnetize those souls whom we are destined to contact and who are destined to contact us to our teachings, our heart center website, our events, our pilgrimages, etc. The greatest divine weapon we have is love. And when we are expressive of these virtues that love is the means to employ within our lives at every turn, then people will come. I told the council recently that I'm realizing that I have to just continue to work on myself. And that if we're not growing as a movement, I look no further than myself to see what I can do better, how I can be more expressive of God's love and wisdom and truth within our movement. If each of us takes this tack and we're not looking to someone else to do it for us or to provide the means whereby somehow we're going to alchemize through some mysterious way or through some marketing scheme a plan to harness souls into or to capture them to come to our midst, then I think that we will get it. When each of us takes this level of accountability and becomes the master. So the short answer is become the ascended master in incarnation. And then you prove that they exist because you are that living proof. So thank you, Britt Marie.